Hello, and welcome back to Hoi 4, Equestria at War, the Ascendancy, under Hurim Zaranid. And in today's episode, we are continuing the Journal of the Guide. And I also have looked up what ingredients you need for this, because apparently you need very specific ingredients, or you just fail. So I'm just gonna just slit that there and not even to worry about that for now until I have more ingredients. Unable to proceed, whatever. Try again. Just keep trying. We'll succeed eventually. The artist unshackled. Oh, come on. Try again. Let's see. The artist unshackled. The Zoomanites have given an opportunity to teach the rest of Equins of Gold about the importance of artistic integrity and creativity of governing the ascendancy. The Urban Renaissance. The Equins of Gold are gifted with the ability to create as much as they are to lead affairs of state. It is about time Zur reflected the beauty of our system as a capital worthy of the Godhead. Woo! Perhaps I try again. Alright, after that, I think I need another gun. We're going next. Just waiting for the next year before dealing with more tech stuff. Nope. The December does have 31 days, not 30. Good job, mate. Okay, I'm starting. These odds are starting to be like really bad. Like that I haven't gotten this. Like I expected to fail this a few times, to be honest. But come on, really. Please. The Urban Renaissance. It has been a long process, but by the divine decree of the Ascendancy, the city of Zur has undergone a dramatic transformation from war-torn ruin to a symbol of the prosperity and plenty of the Ascendancy had to offer its equines. When the Ascendancy first seized control of Zur, it had been a shell of itself, with starving and poor zebras living in the shattered husks of their simple dwellings, trying to survive the indescribable chaos of the destructive civil wars that had plagued the dying corpse of Colthage. But now it was something far greater. Through the Starfather's wisdoms and generosity, the city of Zur has been rebuilt from the ground up in a beautiful blend of traditional Colthaginian adobe and stately, almost divine, brusque pillars and effigies of stone and marble. It was a city that represented the righteous might and the promising future that the Ascendancy would make a reality for the equines of the world as they struggled to restore the Godhead. Though Zur was surely home to many crypto-avians and non-believers who hid beneath the Starfather's watchful gaze, the renovations seemed to have done wonders to quash the malicious lies of their arguments against our cause. The equines of Zur now walk the streets of their new city with heads held high, and the new markets and parks are abuzz with excitement from the city's residents. Perhaps there's no greater indicator of how wonderful the new Zur is the overflowing fiesta organized by the ascendancy to celebrate the completion of the rebuilding. Every equine who could make it has filled the streets in celebration with no regard to their social standing or their caste for one wonderful night. Dutifully observed by numerous equines of silver, the equines of Zur celebrated the ascendancy's bounty late into the night. Woo! Let's go! The Grand Academy of the Godhead. In order to succeed in our mission, we must first equal, then surpass the scientific bases of the other nations. The great artist minds of Zumidites and the keen scientific minds of Umidites will be directed together to establish a center of learning worthy of the Godhead. Okay, seriously? It's a 42% chance. It's a 42% chance. Okay? Okay? That's not very low. In this circumstance, I should not have failed that many times. I should have failed like 3. I would have understood 4. I'm up to 5. So, succeed. Or else. I said to succeed. Seriously now? What is going on? Like, genuinely. What? What? Just what? Oh, Hippogriffia and Chirptera are fighting. Good for them. I don't really care who wins. The rejection of temptation. The world around us is full of rot and decay, and the scheming of the lesser races and their false ideologies threatens our progress towards restoring the Godhead. Firm steps will have to be taken to shield the populace against temptation, lest it jeopardize our work from within. Yeah, finally! A stroke of fortune. Doesn't feel like it. It was on the 7th day that the expedition part... I'm overreacting because, it makes drama, but I'm not actually mad about it. Had its first stroke of fortune. One of the equines of silver had spotted a flash of brilliant emerald green and deep sea blue among the sooty gray that made up the landscape of this part of the Dragon Island. At this point, the party was anxious for any lead, as they had yet to see any dragon, large or small, on their ship thus far. Thus they sailed to the area where the stallion had spotted the flash of color an hour prior. "We have found tracks, my lady guide," Master of Silver began, kneeling as he did, headed due west along the beach, only a few hours old. It appears to be those of a juvenile dragon, separated from the rest of its kind. Well done, Commander, the guide replied. "It appears that your legions have good eyesight. Ready your troops. We'll head out at once." With a nod, the equine stalked off towards the ship, barking orders to resupply and be ready to march. The guide found her eyes drawn to the sky once more, searching for a telltale sign of a dragon's passage overhead, but the sky remained mercifully clear. Even a singular adult would be too much for a small band to manage, but a juvenile? She felt her mouth split into beginnings of a grin. A juvenile would be just perfect. Okay, I'm assuming that we're still in an event then. Embers. It had taken the better part of the day before the search party caught up with its elusive prey. It had been a simple matter to track it. The creature had made little effort to conceal its path, and the expert scouts that accompanied her made child's play of the effort. Now a cave lay before them, with a soft glow emanating from its entrance alongside a mournful sniffling. Holding up a hoof for quiet, the guide stalked ahead alone past the mouth of the cave into the hillside beyond. A dragon that was curled into a ball inside the cave around a small, poorly made campsite. It was unmistakably a juvenile. It was much smaller than a fully grown dragon and did not yet have a pair of wings. At the same time, it stood about as tall as any adult zebra. A quick glance showed it to be in good shape for its age. with its excellent physique and pallor that spoke of good organ functions. It was perfect. It was the perfect specimen. As the guide stalked forward, she kicked a stray pebble on the floor, and the dragon unfurled with a shock, tears in its eyes. Hello? It spoke with a darkness, a waver in its voice. Is anyone there? Please, I need help. The guide strode forward into the light of the flames. Do not be afraid, little one, she bade, acutely aware of the knife concealed beneath her cloak. The dragon cures continued unabated, and it sniffled as it struggled to speak. Can you help me? I fell off my mama's back and got hurt, and now I'm lost. I don't know where they went, and it hurts. Yes, little one, I will help you find your mother. Do you promise? The dragon asked, a note of hope coming from its voice. I promise, the guide lied. She put one hoof on the dragon's shoulder, as if to bring it for a hug, and with one swipe she brought the knife along the dragon's neck. It was over in moments, and the sobbing subsided. Untaid's ingredient, heart of a dragon, to be used in the alchemical super projects. Sad. This area is less wholesome than this area. EXP start, yeah! Manhattan. Ah, Manhattan, the equestrian city that never sleeps. Truly magnificent. And with any other expedition of mine, I shall let my crew rest here for some time, taking into account the long journey ahead of us. This expedition will take me the heart of Equestria itself, but to where exactly, I'm not sure yet. This is a lot more likely to succeed than the last thing. Way more likely. Our artisans unshackled is done. We can now do this. Nice. The perfect ruler. I think I'm gonna go down there just to get that. And by just did that, I truly mean just for the Alchemist Super Project's cooldown time. Truly, that's all. That's the only reason I really want to go down that path. Truly, that is all. Rejection of temptation. The smoke cloud billowed high with the words of blasphemy. All throughout Colthage, books from Griffonia, Hippogriphia, and those with similar sacrilegious origins were being confiscated and thrown into an ever-increasing fire pit. Regretfully, a few equines of gold had to be included in this fire as well, as some of them had made claims that heretical knowledge might be worth keeping around, to help future generations understand the corrupt mind of the avian. The risk was not worth it. All traces of the avian must be removed from this rule. The ideas and concepts that they have created or corrupted are not exempt from this rule. Socialist and communist literature is among the most heinous of these ideas. Even the very act of describing them is enough to paint the seeds of degeneracy in one's mind. And there are none who know this better than Gisela Jazlatit, who has been overseeing this book burning for several hours now. Just the other day, she had the misfortune of coming across a passage written by a crypto-avian named Caramel Marx, and the ideas being presented on it were enough to drive her to request that the Starfather order an immediate purge of this and other heretical books. However, the Starfather agreed to do this only if non-offensive books remained untouched, as many great works had been written by equines not of our faith. In time, Colthage shall know only the purity of equine spirit. The influence of Zalmar must be fought in all its forms. The seekers of the truth. The goal of the ascendancy is one that will require a great deal of sacrifice, and not only from our enemies. We will create a special brand of equines of silver to ensure the discontent from within is exercised swiftly and justly. These seekers of truth shall protect the common equine from themselves and others who seek to pervert their thoughts. Yes, of course. It only makes sense. Welcome to the Big Apple. The sprawl of the city that lay before her was unlike anything the guide had ever seen before. The port city of Manhattan had been selected as the perfect point of entry into the sprawling equestrian nation. It was a huge metropolitan city, and while the thought of being in such Close proximity to avians disgusted her, she could admit that the multiracial makeup of the city would make it easy for a lone zebra to blend in. She had booked passage on a container ship destined for Metropolis, opting to travel separately from her expeditionary party so as to avoid any suspicion. As the ship sailed past the Statue of Friendship, she could barely contain her sense of awe at the skyline that seemed stretched for miles. Giant towers of steel and glass like she'd never seen before seemed to reach into the sky, as in supplication to the gods above. It was impressive, somewhat intimidating sight. For once the guide found herself feeling rather small. A small patrol boat led the guide's ship into port, docking at an otherwise unoccupied pier. Disembarking with a word of thanks to the captain, she trotted up to the dock towards a mercifully small line in front of a small checkpoint. A small sign hung above it, labeled simply Customs. At the head of the line was a stallion, equine, thankfully, wearing an easygoing smile. "Hey, how's it going?" he asked, his accent strange to the guide's ears. He ripped a page off the pad of the paper in front of him. "Name? You may refer to me as the guide." The stallion's smile didn't fade, but it seemed to freeze on his face as he gave a long, discoursing look. "Okay," he said, drawing out the end of his word. "What brings you to Manhattan today, Miss Guide?" "Business of sort," she responded, ignoring the look on the stallion's face. "I'm meeting a friend of mine here." "Well, let me be the first to welcome you to our great city," the stallion said, passing her a signed slip of paper. "I hope you enjoy your stay." "Thank you." Oh. We are not done. The plan of action. A safe house was located in Brooklyn, one of Manhattan's outer boroughs. Compared to the bright lights and bustle of the city proper, Brooklyn was more down to earth, not subdued, per se, but more modest. The particular neighborhood that the guide found herself in seemed to be populated entirely by thrustrels, the bat ponies out and about despite the late hour. The safe house itself was a modest building, some 5 stories high. The other members of the expedition party had gathered here at the behest of their benefactor, a certain thrustrel by the name of Starry Glory. The thrustrel in question sat alone with the guide in a small sitting room at the top floor of the safe house. The two had been deliberating for the better part of an hour, and it seemed as if the thrustrel had finally come to some kind of conclusion. "Bales," Starry said, placing a hoof onto the map sitting on the table in front of them. "It's got the greatest libraries in Equestria, if not the world. If you can't find information on what you're looking for there, then the information just doesn't exist." The guide strode over, humming as she went. Perusing, though, so many tomes might be more difficult than you think, especially searching without aim. I must confess that I am unfamiliar with how equestrians categorize information." The thrustrel waved off any concerns. "Don't worry about that. You have a buddy who works as a librarian there, one of the thrustrels to hold the position," he said with a note of pride. "He'd be more than willing to help us out." I guess that's settled then," the guide said, rising to her hooves. "To Bale we go." The guide has begun her journey on a new expedition in search of ingredients for Starfather. Oh. We have 2 things here. Let's gather info. Bales. The city of Bales is known for the vast quantities of knowledge that it holds, which will be great use for me to find ingredients for the teacher's alchemical project. I will visit the city and spend several days scouring through the countless books of the great libraries hold to find things useful for the journey ahead of me, as well as finding the next destination of this expedition. Also, let's check out Starry Glory. Through his connections with the pen pals, as he likes to refer to them, as the teachers managed to call the service of a thrustrel, Starry Glory, an occultist and a radical lunarist. It's unsurprising that his interests align with Starfather's. Although he doesn't need to know the full picture, we met in Brooklyn, one of the outer boroughs of Manhattan, and we are now ready to commence on our journey. Our journey to the west. Very, very slightly less west, but west indeed. Three northern communes fall. The Dark Crusade on the Aquilian Order. Cool. In the City of Wisdom. The many libraries of Bales had been as useful as Starry Glory had suggested. The guide found herself surrounded by piles of books, as various equines of all shapes and sizes constantly added and removed from the stack with frightening pace. It was as if she was serviced by an entire army of equines of gold. She knew that she would always think fondly of this place. Her time among the stacks had been incredibly useful thus far, and she had located just about everything that she needed to find. Parasprites would be easy to find, as they were everywhere in Equus, but it was mentioned that a particularly large concentration of them could be found in a sleepy town of hollow shades. The dust of Starfall, on the other hoof, would be harder to find. The tombs that she had read mentioned the city of Stalingrad, the city that the guide was not particularly eager to visit. Stalingrad was the city of the crypto-avian Marxists, equines who had been fully surrendered to the foul insults of Zalmair. She shuddered at the thought. She would visit, of course, as the teacher demanded, but she'd be lying if she said that she was anticipating the trip with any particular gladness. Another location that came up frequently in her search was a small town of Ponyville. It sat on the Everfree Forest, a woodland known for its abundance of alchemical regions. It was also supposed to be incredibly frightening. The guide doubted that she would be so easily rattled as the average pony. The guide shut the book in front of her, letting out a long sigh. Ponyville and the Everfree Forest would have to wait until the end of her trip. Now the choice destination lay before her: Hollow Shades or Stalingrad. But first we head over to Hayseed Swamps. Starry Glory said that this region of Equus was home to all sorts of ponies, from threstrels to oddballs that seemed to take pride in their ancient traditions. I don't have time to tour the entire place, but he did mention that the Buffagen was a native to this area, and I know that I need the eye of one for the teacher. Hopefully we won't get too dirty in the swamp. I would hate to have to walk around with a muddied coat. True. Don't want to walk like that. You seem to be having fun, especially down there. I don't know what's gone on. I'm now back to record the last, 3 minutes of this recording. Literally, 8 hours later. It happens. Sometimes things get in the way and you have to deal with other things. And then you're like, okay, now I can finally come back and actually finish this episode. It happens. The Starfather leads us, and as the Equines of Gold need not worry about deciding the future of the Ascendancy. By his direction, our path is clear, as his will shapes our society with glorious purpose. He is the perfect ruler, and it is because of his leadership that we will be able to restore the Godhead. And especially true, it can decrease the cooldown time of alchemical super projects. Which I don't know if that just works for this, or if it works for the Journal of the Guide, but I'd rather go ahead and do it just in case. The Jade Sea Swamps. Inside the Jade Sea Swamps was a small village hidden away in a bayou. Though it scarcely received visitors, today an entourage of equines of silver accompanied a threstrel and an equine of gold as they passed by the village. The Bufadrin you seek lives nearby, said Starry Glory as the guide examined the quaint houses built upon the swamp. It is a large creature with a stench so foul that it can knock out a pony if it gets too close. However, its ears are quite sensitive, so many threstrels simply scream at it until it goes away. The guide eyed him, chuckling. Screaming? Really? Screaming. Really? And Starry nodded, his expression completely serious. The guide brought a hoof to her face as she considered a possibility. If its ears are that sensitive, I might have something that could incapacitate it. The group continued walking for some time, avoiding dirtying their hooves in the swamp when possible. Eventually they began to hear some gurgling noises behind a sizable boulder in front of them. The guide rose a hoof to halt her companions, then spoke in a hushed but commanding voice. When I give the signal, Close your eyes and cover your ears. After 5 seconds, open them and charge the creature. She reached into her pouch and pulled out a pair of potions and an empty vial. As she slowly walked around the boulder, she spotted it, a giant many-eyed creature that seemed to be preoccupied with eating moss from a tree. The guide carefully and quickly poured both potions into an empty vial, which began to sizzle. She then tossed it at the Buffagen and shouted, "Now! Charge! I can't see!" The concussion smashed against the Buffagen, causing the chemicals within the splatter all across it. The sizzling turned into popping, and then after a moment began a cacophony of blinding flashes and deafening bangs. The Buffagen brought its hands to its ears and tried to halt the assault, but the painful noise was simply too much for it to bear. It toppled over, then was soon assaulted by the equines of silver and their deadly weapons. When the deed was done, Starry Glory came up to the guide and asked, "What was that? I've never seen or heard anything like that. What you just did." She smiled as she retrieved an eye from the Buffagen. "An experiment, honestly, though it was quite effective, wouldn't you agree? Perhaps that kind of effect could be weaponized in the future. Obtain ingredient Eye of Buffagen to be used in the chemical super projects." Next, let's search Hollowshades. Hollowshades, a quaint, out-of-the-way town, at least according to Starry Glory. According to some newspapers, they've had a somewhat recent problem with parasprites, so I hope to find some there. Despite knowing better, I almost want to keep one as a pet. They're kind of cute. They are. Parasprites are really cute. They're just also evil and, like, completely and utterly evil. And you don't want one as a pet, so, you know. Upsides and downsides. But I think this is a good place to go ahead and end this episode. If you enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell button. And as always, peace.